Hello and welcome. In this video, we're going to talk about what could be viewed as a paradox. Namely, on the one hand, our true identity lies totally beyond our individuality, as part of an infinite, intelligent consciousness, and, on the other hand, there are undeniably more or less authentic ways in which we can think, speak, and act. While there may be no final answers to the so-called riddles of life, hopefully, you will better understand what in you is an expression of authenticity and what is not after this video. In our world, surfaces often masquerade as substance, and we may not be aware when our behavior and interactions are grounded in what is authentic inside us. But on some level, we can sense when we're putting on a show, and we can sense when others are doing it, even if the capacity to do so varies a lot between individuals. With this in mind, it becomes vitally important to discern the difference between what is real and what is false, not just in the external material realm, but more crucially within our inner world. Gurdjieff's teachings in the Fourth Way emphasize that what we often take as our singular self is, in truth, a fragmented collection of many selves. These various selves, or I's, compete for attention and control. They arise moment by moment, each presenting itself as the central I, shaping our thoughts, emotions, and actions in ways that obscure a true, unified self. This understanding is central to the concept of false personality, a construct driven by unconscious habits, external influences, and societal norms. Related to this concept is the difference between personality and essence, and there will be a video on the topic soon. However, a short explanation is in order. False personality refers to the mask created by societal conditioning, habitual thoughts, and external pressures. It is reactive and shaped by expectations, often obscuring the real personality, which arises from conscious effort and alignment with one's essence. In contrast, the distinction between personality and essence is foundational to understanding human development. Essence represents the innate, unchanging core, your true nature present at birth. Personality, however, is acquired over time, shaped by experiences, environment, and education. While personality can be valuable for navigating the world, it often overpowers essence as false layers accumulate. As you can see, the true personality is closely tied to one's essence, while the false personality consists of unnecessary baggage that we've unconsciously accumulated along the way. If this sounds confusing, just keep in mind that, according to the Fourth Way system, you are born with an essence, and as long as your personality develops in harmony with this essence, it develops into real personality. What usually happens instead is that we adopt this persona that we here refer to as false personality, consciously or unconsciously, to fit in, meet expectations, and avoid conflict. At its root, false personality is reactive, adapting to what is expected or required rather than originating from a deeper, truer place within you. This reactivity can manifest either in conformity or rebellion, both being dictated by external conditions rather than genuine inner will. What is important to recognize here is that whether you conform or rebel, you are still just reacting to your environment as long as you're not making real, authentic, conscious choices. And it takes a lot of self-observation, self-reflection, and willingness to be able to look honestly at oneself to recognize what is what. Pride, prestige, and other sentiments will often blind us from seeing these dynamics clearly. In other words, our false personality is reinforced not only by external influences, but also by our mechanical reactions to experiences. Emotional habits, thought patterns, and ingrained responses solidify this mask over time. For most, life flows unexamined, with the cycle of mechanical existence perpetuating itself without disruption. Even success, as defined by societal measures, often deepens the entrenchment of this personality, leaving little room for the emergence of something authentic. As a matter of fact, it's often the hardships of life that have the potential of loosening the grip of the false personality. as these are the experiences that push one to start questioning one's self and one's being in the world. In contrast, the real personality that stems from one's essence is something far deeper and unspoiled. It exists beneath the layers of conditioning and habitual reactions. Distinguishing between the false and the real begins with awareness, which is what this video so far has been about. You've been introduced to a way that your psyche operates that you may or may not have been unaware of prior to listening to this content. We've already touched upon the many eyes that you have inside, and we will now look a bit deeper at this. You must first acknowledge the multiplicity of your inner world. What appears to be a singular, coherent self is on closer inspection a chorus of voices, each vying for dominance. These eyes often contradict each other, creating internal friction. You may find yourself passionately pursuing a goal one moment, only to dismiss it the next. Recognizing this inconsistency is a necessary step towards seeing the false personality for what it is, a patchwork, not a unified whole. We look at this more in depth in our video on inner unity, and there will be a link to it at the end screen. What is important to keep in mind is that these selves are not built upon something solid and real within, but have emerged as a consequence of what we've been talking about, namely external influences and automatic reactions. Another crucial aspect of this work, and the absolute foundation of it, is self-observation. This is not a passive process, but an active discipline. By observing your reactions, thought patterns, and emotional responses without judgment, you can begin to see the mechanical nature of the false personality. For instance, you might notice how often you adjust your behavior to suit the expectations of those around you, or how your mood shifts dramatically depending on trivial external stimuli. Each observation sheds light on the layers of falsehood that obscure your essence. After a while, you may start noticing some very unflattering traits, such as manipulativeness, vanity, jealousy, resentfulness, obsequiousness, etc. We often mistakenly think of these traits as conscious and deliberate when we notice them in other people, while not noticing them at all within ourselves. While some people can display negative traits consciously, for the most part, they just happen through conditioning, our reactive responses, and the habits that we develop as a result. If we keep this in mind, knowing that this is a quote-unquote normal part of the human condition, it becomes easier to forgive both ourselves and others. It will also be easier to uncover these traits within ourselves when we view what we find with compassion instead of anger, guilt, and shame, since we tend to hide that which causes too much discomfort from ourselves. For most of us, our awakening process is painful enough as it is, without us adding even more layers of self-condemnation to it. False personality is deeply intertwined with your sense of identity. To let go of it can feel like a form of death, a loss of the person you thought you were. But this loss is essential. Only by relinquishing the false can the real emerge. This process demands courage, as it involves facing uncomfortable truths about yourself and unlearning patterns that have defined you for a long time. As you may understand from what has been said so far, what is required is a process of subtraction, a clearing away of the noise and clutter, so that your essence can shine through your persona in a way that is authentic and unique to you, while paradoxically remembering that this you is in itself an elusive concept once you start examining it. It's funny to note that the more you try to find this you, the more fake it seems to become, while when you instead shed layer upon layer of what you're not, this you seems to emerge effortlessly. We've already touched upon the role that hardships may play in this process, and this is also crucial in Gurdjieff's teachings. He highlights the role of external shocks in this process. Life provides opportunities, often in the form of crises or unexpected disruptions, that can jolt you out of mechanical living. These moments, while challenging, are opportunities to observe yourself more deeply, observe how you habitually respond under pressure, and choose a different way of being. For this to work, We need to let go of or need to have things a certain way and learn to live with the fear of the unfamiliar until the fear dissipates. Here, it's crucial to recognize that nothing is as serious as it may seem. Seen from a higher perspective, where we understand ourselves as immortal spiritual beings having a finite human experience. If we don't just understand this intellectually, but firmly ground it in our being, it takes the edge off of every hardship that we may temporarily be facing. Losing a job unexpectedly is a striking example of an external shock that can jolt one out of mechanical living. This situation may provoke automatic reactions such as fear, anger, or self-pity, responses deeply rooted in false personality. However, the fourth way teaching suggests that such moments hold the potential for profound transformation if approached with conscious awareness. When faced with this disruption, it is essential to observe the internal reactions without immediately identifying with them. By paying attention to the arising emotions and thoughts, such as anxiety about the future or resentment over perceived injustice, you can begin to understand these reactions as habitual patterns. Gurdjieff's teachings stress that this observation creates space for self-remembering, bringing awareness to the deeper sense of your being, beyond the surface turmoil. Rather than being swept away by mechanical responses, this awareness allows you to consciously choose your next steps. Instead of succumbing to despair, you may recognize this as an opportunity to reassess your direction in life. The apparent loss can serve as a catalyst for reconnecting with your essence, unencumbered by external identities tied to the role of employment. By meeting such a shock with neutrality, as Gurdjieff advises, you begin to see the event not as inherently good or bad, but as a moment that presents itself for learning and growth. This impartiality weakens the grip of false personality and opens the possibility of acting with intention rooted in your authentic self. Over time, such responses to external shocks can deepen the practice of self-observation and self-remembering, paving the way for conscious transformation. However, don't be discouraged if this feels difficult. Many events are hard to perceive as neutral, and it's even harder to see the positives in them. You've practiced going unconscious and reacting to triggering, challenging events for a long time. It takes time to break this habit, and your attempts to do so will be met with inner resistance in the form of discomfort. However, this discomfort is your ego trying to keep you in the familiar, so it's not tied to any real threat. And if you keep this up, it will get easier with time. An essential practice in this work is the somewhat elusive concept of self-remembering. This involves maintaining awareness of yourself in the present moment, not just awareness of your external actions, but an inner awareness of your being. It is through this practice that the real personality can begin to manifest. Real personality is active, not reactive. It is guided by conscious will rather than automatic response. It cannot be faked, and it is not what your thoughts tell you that it is. This state is something that has to be experienced to be fully grasped, but it is a state where you are fully grounded in the here and now, knowing consciously that you are looking out through your eyes. You will know when you are experiencing it if you know what it is that you are experiencing. It is a way of experiencing yourself and the world that is very different from the normal sleeping state. It is closely related to the deeper aspects of mindfulness, and it can sometimes be triggered automatically when you find yourself in an unfamiliar setting. In summary, the difference between false and real personality is the difference between living mechanically and living consciously. False personality is a construct shaped by external forces and perpetuated by unconscious habits. It is reactive, inconsistent, and ultimately limiting. Real personality, on the other hand, is your essence, unchanging and true. It emerges through the practice of self-observation, self-remembering, and intentional effort. This work is challenging, but it is also the path to genuine freedom and fulfillment. The journey from false to real personality is not about becoming someone new. It is about rediscovering who you have always been. Finally, the distinction between real and false personality, between essence and the masks we wear, is the riddle of identity itself. False personality, the residue of culture and conditioning, keeps us tethered to the known, the safe. By stepping beyond the mechanical, by observing and remembering, we break free of our habitual loops. As stated in the beginning, it is sort of a paradox that our essence is elusive, and on the other hand, there seems to be something more or less authentic within us that can be expressed in different ways. But hopefully, you can begin to see how this paradox is being resolved beyond our mind's insistence on words and concepts, as this approach reveals the extreme limitation of the word machines inside our heads, as soon as we start accessing what is hidden just beneath the surface of the human experience. You are here reminded of being wary of the mind's tendency to confuse words with reality and encouraged to start trying to consciously observe when this is happening in your own experiences. As you move deeper into your awakening, what you will find is that lines blur as we move beyond what our minds can grasp. We see that, while we experience ourselves as individuals, what seems most true within us seems to have a universal character, and it seems to stem from something infinite, far beyond our physical bodies and brains. You are here reminded that this process is primarily one of letting go. As the authentic, you seems to come out more and more naturally the more baggage you shed, and paradoxically, the more you let go of your experience of yourself as a separate person with a separate identity. You've now reached the end of the video. Remember to like and subscribe. Thank you for your time.